On today's show, big night in the association, a bunch of blowouts and a bunch of close games as well that came down to the wire. Good stuff in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. Nick Angstadt locked on Mavs, David Ramil locked on Heat. Let's get into it on a Tuesday on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome. You're locked on to the NBA. My name is Nick Angstadt, host of the Locked On Mavericks podcast. And as always on a Tuesday, it's David Ramil from Locked On Heat. What you got for me, David Ramil?
Not much. Just trying to get used to a new voice on the other end here after a few years of talking to Wes Goldberg on Locked On NBA. It feels kind of different, but you know what? I'm excited for the challenge.
I appreciate that it's a challenge. Switching it up a little bit here on Locked On NBA, getting different voices. Now that David and Wes are doing Locked On Heat every single day, we didn't want, how can we just do Locked On Heat Tuesdays? I guess that was what Locked On NBA would have turned into.
Absolutely. Why not? It's, it's a fun team. It's worth talking about even on a national television show.
As the host of Locked On Mavericks, I think I can agree with most people. The world has enough heat, right? We don't need any more global warming and everything. We don't need any more heat in the world.
You need more heat culture is what you need, Nick.
Oh my God. It would fix my trick knee, maybe. It would finally get me in shape at a certain point if I had heat culture in my life. This episode is brought to you by Truebill. Truebill is the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for the subscriptions you don't need or want. You can even negotiate better deals on those you want to keep. All right, let's get into today's episode. Bunch of games in the association. We'll break them all down. We'll talk about every single game. And then in the third segment, we're trying something new. So let us know what you think. Let us know in the comments in the YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, Locked On NBA, every single Locked On NBA show is there every single day. You can go subscribe there. We're free and available on all platforms. But we're going to try a report card segment. We're going to give teams and maybe some players sometimes. We'll give people grades on the games that they had or based on how they did. So it's not just, okay, team won, they get an A. That doesn't always, some wins are B's, some wins are C's, right? Some losses can be B's or A's. I know we don't do moral victories a lot on the Locked On Podcast Network, but we may do a couple. So we'll try a report card in the third segment. Let's get into it. The first game on the docket that was actually kind of interesting going into it, the Washington Wizards fall to the Charlotte Hornets 109-103. LaMelo Ball in this game, man, he just came out and going into halftime, LaMelo Ball went on a run basically of his own. 5 minutes and 40 seconds left in the second quarter. LaMelo scored 15 of the Hornets' last 21 points at the end there, just like draining 3 threes in a row, basically. Man, when he's on and he's hitting threes, it's a lot like Luka. Like, there's just nobody that beats that team at times. Now, they fell in other areas, but when LaMelo's hitting, they're just a different team, that Hornets team.
Yeah, I mean, when he's bringing his offense to complement his playmaking, that certainly makes him much more dangerous. But I think they also got a phenomenal performance from Terry Rozier, somewhat unexpectedly, 32 points, 8 of 11 from three-point range. That's a phenomenal shooting night for any player, especially for somebody like Rozier. He's been pretty good in Charlotte, and he continues his hot streak as far as being just a very productive player as well. Look, I mean, with LaMelo Ball, certainly he's going to get the most attention because he's an exciting player and everything else like that. But he was just shy of a triple-double, too. He only had 7 assists in the night. So looking a little bit more aggressively for his own shot, and it paid off tonight. That's usually the difference for him, is that really always being a scorer, he's mostly just trying to be a playmaker, a guy who kind of complements everybody else on offense.
And he's a guy that's just in the right spot at the right times. Late in the game, with about 51 seconds left, KCP had a 3, and the Hornets were up 105-103. So it was a 2-point game right there. Montrezl Harrell got a rebound off of a Charlotte miss. And then LaMelo Ball just comes in and punches the ball right out of Montrezl Harrell's hand. And Rozier gets a 3. That basically sealed the game for the Hornets. So LaMelo just being in the right place, right time, knowing where it is, he takes that Hornet team to just a completely different level. We were talking about that team over the last couple of years as this team has no direction. I don't know where they're going. What's their hope? I mean, Kemba leaves. There's just nothing left for them. And now all of a sudden you're like, okay, I can see what they're building around. I can see that now they have, I think LaMelo Ball can be a 1A type of guy that you can build like definitely a playoff team around, and maybe even a high-level playoff team around.
It depends, right? You've got to build the right personnel around a player like that. I mean, complementing him with shooters, I think, is the best aspect. And unfortunately for the Hornets, Miles Bridges did not have a great shooting night, 0 for 4 from three-point range. but that's usually the recipe, right? I mean, he's got to be able to find somebody out as he's creating offense for himself and others. And for Charlotte, at least on tonight, it paid off for him.
I would love to see LaMelo with like a really good rim rolling center. That's another thing I would just really like to see. I don't know if Plumlee's getting it done for him.
I don't think he's that option. I don't think he's ever been that option.
I saw so many Hornets fans just complaining about how bad Mason Plumlee was at times in this game. The Wizards, though, lose. The Wizards have been the surprise team at the top of the Eastern Conference standings, and them and a lot of other teams are just leaving the East wide open for the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn Nets get the win over the Cleveland Cavaliers, 117 to 112. For the Cavs, this was the return of Jarrett Allen and Lauri Markkanen. Evan Mobley still out for them. Obviously, Colin Sexton is out for the year for them. And for the Brooklyn Nets, they roll into another win. I mean, out of the ashes of defeat, the Brooklyn Nets come back, and Kevin Durant leads them 27 points, 9 assists for him.
Where's KD rank as far as your MVP candidates is concerned? Like Steph being the clear favorite. I know Luka's probably somewhere in the conversation as in Dallas.
Not even close. He's not even close right now.
Okay. So KD isn't anywhere close to Steph?
No, Luka's not. But Kevin Durant was my preseason MVP. I think he's probably there right now. I mean, they're number one team in the East right now, which is what we've been talking about. The East is wide open, and Kevin Durant, I think, is coming and taking that MVP right now. He's, as soon as people actually start having this conversation of who's MVP, and as soon as we're allowed to, like I'm doing air quotes for everybody listening on the podcast, as soon as we're allowed to have that, which I think even John Krause says, I'm not doing the MVP conversation until after All-Star. I'm not having it till after, a certain date, like whatever date people pick. KD's going to be on the tops of those conversations.
I don't want to delve into this for too deeply, but I think John's off. Like these narratives start building early in the season, and they have a way of kind of evolving and growing throughout the course of the season. Sure, there's a name that kind of crops up if there's a strong second half of the season performance or things of that sort. But you're already start getting your favorites now, and it's basically Steph's to lose. So I just find that curious. But as far as the wide open nature of the Eastern Conference, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of teams that feel like they are in the hunt, that there's a possibility for them. Even look at the Charlotte team. They're a dangerous playoff team. I don't know that you'd necessarily want to catch them if they're kind of rolling, if they've got everything going offensively. I think you have a lot of teams like Miami. You've got Chicago, obviously, even though they wound up losing a game we'll talk about a little bit later. Brooklyn still without Kyrie Irving, and who knows when he'll be available. But at the same time, obviously still very dangerous. Milwaukee finding their groove against a bad Orlando team on Monday night. That's a team that's getting healthier, and then eventually they'll be, pretty damn good because they did wind up winning the championship last year. So you can't discount them completely.
Finding their groove is a really nice way to put it for what Milwaukee did. What Milwaukee did on Monday night. We'll get into that game in a little bit. But yeah, the East is wide open. Chicago loses. And now all of a sudden, the Brooklyn Nets were like faltering at the beginning of the season. We're like, oh man, the Brooklyn Nets without Kyrie, James Harden doesn't look right. The new rules, and now they're top of the East, and everybody's like, okay, well, it's Brooklyn's to lose again.
Yeah, good point. Harden only 4 3-throw attempts, so
Oh, it's broken. The rules have broken him.
I saw during the broadcast as I was watching the game that LaMarcus Aldridge is Steve Nash's closer in the fourth quarter, and that was not a statement I expected to hear. But they are getting some good contributions from bench guys. I mean, Blake Griffin is Blake Griffin at this point in his career. Aldridge still consistent as a scorer, still dangerous on occasion, I guess. As a closer, I'm not sure if he quite fits the bill, but. Do you have a favorite in the Eastern Conference as of right now? I know it's early. Obviously, Brooklyn at the very top, but Miami looks pretty good. And I'm not just saying that because I cover the team.
No, Miami does look really good. I think they're the one team right now that's playing well enough and has the pieces to be able to match a Brooklyn Nets team. I don't see Chicago. The Wizards seem like a little fluky to me. The Hornets are up there, but I'm not sure about them. The Celtics are just all over the place. And then the Bucks have they've started out pretty slow. I think once they'll get going, they'll have the pieces to be able to match. But I think it's those two teams at the top. The Nets and the Heat are the two teams at the top of the East. After what I saw in Dallas a little while ago, where the Heat just destroyed the Mavericks and the way that they can win games in a bunch of different ways, I think that team's really good.
I will say that Miami did lose a game recently against the Washington Wizards after having beat them in Miami, and the Wizards. A very good surprise team there. I know obviously they're the surprise team of the year so far, but they've been playing well defensively. Trading away Russell Westbrook has paid off incredibly well for that Wizards team. Yeah, a lot of people actually, but
right.
They're a much more just well-built roster at this point. Kyle Kuzma's actually contributing. He's not just, a lackey on LeBron James's team. I like that Wizards team, even though they did stumble against the Hornets tonight. But, it's a fun Eastern Conference to see so many teams with a realistic chance of being able to get past them. I think Brooklyn clearly still a favorite just because they've got that kind of championship experience. They've also got some really high-end level talented players, especially if they get Irving back. But still, there's a lot of teams that are much more well-built and I think can challenge the Nets for supremacy in the Eastern Conference.
In this game, though, Cam Thomas kind of gets a nice little appearance. 11 points for him. He could be the Kyrie Irving replacement if he comes in. He could replace a little bit of that. I'm not saying 100% if I'm putting a percentage on it. Cam Thomas maybe comes in and gets some of those buckets they've been missing.
Yeah.
All right. Coming up, lots more games to get into. The Memphis Utah game came down to the end of it. Want to break down that game? What happened? There was this weird whistle, weird basket interference stuff that happened, and then John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr. going off and beating the Utah Jazz. We got to talk about that game, and of course, we'll get to report card in the third segment. But before we do that, let me tell you about Shopify. Shopify is, it's the sound of another sale. On Shopify, it's the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. In case you don't know, Shopify is a complete commerce platform that lets you start, grow, and manage your business. The subscription-based software allows anyone to set up an online store and sell their products. Shopify store owners can also sell in physical locations using Shopify POS, our point-of-sale app, and accompanying hardware. You can use this for your business to sell whatever you need. You can sell bricks if you want to sell them to your favorite team when they don't hit shots. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big business, so upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everything, synchronize online and in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed. Scaling your business is a journey of endless possibilities, and Shopify helps you with that. Go to shopify.com/lockedonnba. That's all lowercase, lockedonnba, for a free 14-day trial and get a full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify. Go to shopify.com/lockedonnba. Again, all lowercase, lockedonnba. Shopify.com/lockedonnba. All right, David Ramil, let's get into some more of these games. We got to move a little bit on some of these. There's a ton of games we have to get through. The Memphis Grizzlies play the Utah Jazz, and they get the win. A big one for Memphis. They absolutely needed it. Let's go ahead and hear from one of our favorites on the Locked On Podcast Network, Sean Coleman. Sean Coleman, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, but let's hear from him talking about this great Grizzlies win for Memphis.
It truly has been a tale of two teams this season so far for the Memphis Grizzlies, and while it certainly has been the worst of times, it also has been some of the best of times, and tonight may be the very best. A 119-118 huge bounce back victory for the Grizzlies over the Utah Jazz. Sean Coleman here with you from Locked On Grizzlies. Ja Morant absolutely outstanding once again, but with DeAnthony Melton and Dylan Brooks out, the Grizzlies defense played good enough. They played good enough, got enough stops to allow for their offense to step up, and step up they did. Desmond Bane, a career high, 28 points. Jaren Jackson Jr., the game-winning shot, stepping up to be the difference maker that so many want him to be on a consistent basis. He did it on one of the biggest stages in the NBA in recent years, beating one of the best teams in the league in the Utah Jazz. A very good performance. Again, the Grizzlies overall struggled from three. They also allowed the Jazz to hit their threes, but the Grizzlies found enough baskets at the end to be able to get a big victory. If you want an idea of what the potential of this Grizzlies team is, this is the exact type of game.
The Memphis Grizzlies, again, get that win. Weird thing happened at the end of this. So towards the end of this game, Bojan Bogdanovic hits 2 threes, and the Jazz are up 118-112 with a minute and a half left. And so you're like, okay, the Jazz have this. They've gotten the hang of it. They're beating them from 3. They'll just close with Mitchell and Gobert and all them. This is a veteran team. They know how to close this. So
not quite.
It didn't exactly go that way. So come down to the other end of the floor. It's late in the game. The Jazz just couldn't find any buckets. Ja Morant hits a free throw, and then he misses the second one. Gobert and Jaren Jackson Jr. get tangled up, and they're trying to bat at the ball. They get called for basket interference. One of them, I don't know who, it doesn't matter at this point who it was, but one of them gets called for basket interference. They review for what seems like 10 minutes, and then they call an inadvertent whistle. and then they jump the ball in the middle. So any two players on the court can jump the ball. The Memphis Grizzlies get the ball. Ja Morant drives, kicks out to Jaren Jackson Jr. He hits the three. Memphis takes the lead at that point, and that's where it ends right there. Memphis, another stat that was shared on the broadcast, Memphis is 4-1 after losing the previous game by 19 or more points. There cannot be a team in the NBA that has more than 4 wins the game after losing by 19 or more points, right? Like, that's an insane stat.
No, I mean, I guess it just shows resiliency, right? I mean, but a big game for Jaren Jackson, like Sean mentioned, with the Dickensian reference. I like that Jaren is that complimentary player that he's able to step up on a big night. And on the up other side of things, Donovan Mitchell, I mean, 5 of 20 from the floor. Can he be that guy? I mean, is it just a bad night for him? Because it feels like the scuttlebutt around Utah is always about Mitchell being so wildly inefficient that he's going to shoot you into games and he's just as likely to shoot you out of them. And I wonder if it's starting to become a problem. Like, he's their superstar. He's the player that they're building around, obviously. But you look at the problems with Utah over the last couple of years. Yes, Rudy Gobert gets played off the court. You have Donovan Mitchell being somewhat inefficient at times, and yes, having some monster games sandwiched in between. But by and large, he just holds on the ball too much. He's going to be the only scoring option at the tail end of games. And right now, that's not necessarily a winning recipe for the Jazz, even though they do wind up, being somewhat successful over the regular season. It just doesn't translate to the playoffs. Yeah,
this Jazz team has big time. We're saving it for the playoffs energy, right? We're not gonna blow our load during the regular season too much, right? Like, we're not gonna put too much into this regular season. Go all out, go out for these games, like try super hard late in games, and just they've got some older players at this point now, the guys that have been around for a while, so they're not trying to do too much, and it's cost them some games here and there, and I think it may have cost them in this one as well. We'll also have to mention on the other side of it, Desmond Bane, 28 points for him, 4 boards, 4 assists, 2 steals. He was like part of their go-to offense at the end of this game too. He had 4 threes, some of them really, really big late in the game. Yeah. 12 of 20 from the field, so 60% from the field, which is really efficient for him. An incredible draft pick. Who would have thought that Desmond Bane would be better than what another draft pick that another team would have made that may reside in the state of Texas? So yeah, but Desmond Bane, incredible game for him as well.
Yeah, they're getting some great depth there on Memphis, and I don't see them as a legit contender right yet. But at the same time, they're dangerous. You don't want to necessarily face a player like Morant who can go off on any given night.
This is a sneaky revenge game for them after the playoffs too. I kind of forgotten about that. That now Memphis gets their revenge against the Jazz. All right. Now we got to get into some of these blowouts in the night. We got to breeze through some of them, and none of them were more blowy outy than the Orlando Magic and the Milwaukee Bucks. 123-92, the Bucks get the win, but that does not tell the entire story. The Bucks at one point had a 50-point advantage in the third quarter against this Orlando team. This Orlando team scored, They scored 36 points in the fourth quarter. And that was as many points as they scored in the first half. Like, this team was just absolutely, they're down a couple starters, but this Orlando team is just dreadful at times.
Well, missing key players, at least from what we've heard out of Orlando. They were missing a couple players. Cole Anthony was not in the starting line. Gary Harris was out too. So obviously Jonathan Isaac is still nursing injury. I get it. At the same time, that's a tough loss. Like, what do you say on either side of the equation? Like, from the Milwaukee side, how do you even stay engaged and say, yeah, you're up 50, don't let them come back? I mean, at this point, you'd have to basically roll over or die to give Orlando a chance at making this even fairly close. They wind up cutting it to almost 30-ish, so I guess they wound up having somewhat of a comeback. But on the Orlando side, give them credit for staying in it. Look, it's an obvious long rebuild there yet again in Orlando. I guess this is one of those important games. I wonder how they'll bounce back from this. Maybe it doesn't really necessarily matter. You were pointing out a very interesting tidbit before we started recording about their go-to offense being centered on, no pun intended, on Robin Lopez in the fourth quarter. Yeah. The slow rolling hook shot. Unstoppable.
They went to that. They scored 36 points in the fourth quarter. Before that,
most of those from Robin.
And a lot of that was thanks to Robin Lopez offense. He was really getting it done for him. What you say if you're Milwaukee, though? Giannis only had to play 23 minutes, and 7 of the Milwaukee players were in double figures. This was a team win, pretty, not a statement win, but like a good team win. We're the champs. Like, we're continuing to just blow through teams we're supposed to. Right. Orlando also only got 28 points from their starters.
Not good.
Total, like total points from their starters. Brutal for them. Yeah, I guess you just move on. Sorry, Jamal Mosley. All right, next game here: OKC versus the Atlanta Hawks. OKC, I thought for a minute, I turned this game on my second screen for a second because around halftime, OKC had the game tied. They were only down by like 5 or 6 at halftime. And I was like, ooh, OKC every once in a while, they sneak one of these games in. They had those 2 games against the Lakers, a couple of good wins for them, but it wasn't in the cards at all. OKC falls 113 to 101, and no Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in this game for the Thunder. But for Atlanta is now 9-9 after starting 4-9 on the season. They're 8-1 at home and 1-8 away. What's the deal with teams just sometimes being terrible on the road and really good at home?
It feels like it's mostly like a young team, right? That just doesn't have that kind of veteran stability to understand the challenges of what's at stake. And that's probably been my biggest concern with Atlanta. And when people wanted to kind of look at what their success of last year was and automatically slide them in as a potential contender this year, I just didn't see it because I just don't think they have that one. Okay, say what you will about Trae Young. Maybe he's a star, maybe he's not, depending on whose opinion. Maybe he fits that categorization for some people. He doesn't quite for me. And I think a part of that is just that I don't necessarily can rely on him to be that steadying presence when you go on the road to be able to carry your team through victory. He's just too inefficient at times. And I think they're still missing some of those veterans that are essential for a championship run. Atlanta seems to be missing that kind of stability, that presence to be able to say, look, we're on the road. We know that they're going to make a run against us because that's just the way every NBA game plays out. And unfortunately for Atlanta, it winds up biting them in the ass more often than not. So that's my biggest concern about the Hawks. I just don't see them as a true contender. Now, that's not to say they're not good and that they can't be dangerous in the playoffs, but I don't know. I don't see them as a realistic chance at going to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I mean, especially where they're coming from right now. They just have not started the season well at all. Their defense is awful. Trae Young is one of those players. He's just an ultimate shooter, right? You ride high on the hot streaks, and then you ride super low on the cold streaks, right? It just seems like that's the sort of player that he is right now. And when he's riding high, you go to the Eastern Conference Finals. When he's riding low, you're like a 4-9 team to start the season. So it just depends. By the way, 8 other Hawks besides Trae Young all scored between 8 and 13 points. So it was kind of like one of those team wins for them too.
Sure.
They're pretty spread out across the board. The Houston Rockets fall to the Boston Celtics in Jaylen Brown's return. Let's hear from our boy John Corrales of Locked On Celtics and Locked On NBA about the Celtics win. He's live in the stadium. I guess live, sort of live. He was there at one point.
Hey, John Corrales here at the TD Garden, fresh off a Boston Celtics 108-90 blowout win over the Houston Rockets. A slow start for the Celtics, who seemed to feel like they could just put it together for 12 minutes whenever they needed to and get this win. It was a tight game in the first. They got a little separation in the second. Then in the third quarter, after realizing in the first half that they couldn't just shoot their way to a win, they got really aggressive and blew the doors off the Houston Rockets in the third quarter there. Pushed it up to about a 26-point game, 29-point game. Houston challenged at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Ime Udoka did what I asked him to do in the podcast, which is start fourth quarters with your best players on the floor. He had Tatum, quickly brought in Brown, and ultimately the Celtics were able to push back and get this win, an easy win. No fourth quarter blown lead, no fourth quarter late in the fourth embarrassing need to put your starters back in. We had garbage time towards the end, and this is exactly what the Celtics needed to do. So
there you go. The only thing I'll add to that, John Corrales said it well, Houston Rockets, no starters in double figures at all in this game, and only 2 guys in double figures. Kenyon Martin Jr. off the bench with 10 points, and then Armani Brooks led the way for the Rockets with 17 points. Man, this Rockets team is just... I feel like I'm saying the same thing I said about Orlando, but just dreadful at times, just brutal.
It's shout out to the Rockets fans for staying engaged and looking forward to a future that doesn't seem particularly hopeful right now, because they're still engaged somewhat when things are so bad with this current version of the team. I guess there's some cause for hope there, but I don't necessarily see it myself. I don't necessarily like following losing teams, but you know what? The Rockets fans have been supportive of this group, and it's obvious of their support of Locked On Rockets too.
Yeah, they have a future for sure. I mean, Jalen Green, the future, and they got a bunch of young. Şengün has been their sort of rallying cry for Rockets fans, I think. But this is a good win for the Celtics, getting Jaylen Brown back. He had missed.
Is it? I got to challenge that. Like between you and John saying it's a good win, it's like that you didn't fall apart doesn't necessarily seem like it's a good win. At least not to me. It's like, well, you do what you're supposed to against a one and whatever team.
It's an 18-point win, right? An 18-point win, obviously against the worst team in the league. But you're like, okay, if they had lost this game or if they had won this game by 2 points, like we're going to talk about this Phoenix Suns Spurs game. That's not a good win for the Suns, right? They did get the win. Maybe we should do report card early. What would you give the Celtics for this win?
I'd give them a C minus. They
passive.
showed up. Yeah, they showed up and
passive.
they did what they were supposed to, and they're probably copying off somebody else's paper or something like that. I mean, they were doing okay. Look, you've got star potential here. This has been a disappointing team. Right? You can wrap it up any way you want to. John is selling a great product over there. At the same time, I just don't see like you've got great players. You've got superstar level players there, and I know you're welcoming Jaylen Brown back, as Corrales said, but at the same time, like you can't put away the Rockets when, as you said, no starter with over 9 points. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, no. Okay, it was a win. How about that? We'll put it that way. All right, coming up, we got some more games to break down. We'll do it in our segment report card. We'll give grades to some of the teams that had good wins, maybe a good loss, maybe a bad win. We'll talk about that and give them some letter grades coming up. But first, let me tell you about Truebill. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam to get you. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money, take your money from you. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. I know every once in a while I'll just be like, hold on, I still have like CBS All Access? What even was that? Isn't it called something else now? I'll just randomly see I have a subscription and I need Truebill. It's the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or simply forget about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel. So don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. It could save you thousands of dollars a year. Why wouldn't you want to do that, especially with the holidays coming? Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Also want to tell you about RockAuto.com. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock everything that you need. So if you're trying to go on a long road trip before the holidays, you need to fix something on your car, go to rockauto.com. Save money and time. When you go there, you can get the part delivered straight to your door. You don't have to go somewhere, see if they have it. They don't. Then they have to order it. You're like, I could have just ordered it myself and saved myself a trip. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, David Ramil, let's get into the rest of these games in our report card segment. First game I want to bring up is one that I found pretty interesting. Phoenix Suns, San Antonio Spurs. The Phoenix Suns eke out a win in a game that they probably should have dominated. And the Spurs have not been that great of a team, but the Suns had several times in this game, 15-point lead. They end up winning just by 4 points. Wild end of this stretch here. So, the Spurs had at one point cut the 15-point lead to 5 with about 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. The Suns, in less than 2 minutes, go on a 10-0 run, retake the 15-point lead. So you're like, okay, Suns are just going to run this out again. 4 minutes left to go. Team that went to the finals last year. Then all of a sudden, they start chipping away, and they start chipping away. The Spurs start chipping away. Minute 30 left. It's down to just 9 points. Chris Paul misses a mid-range shot. You go to the other end. Derek White hits a 3. Other end, Devin Booker misses a mid-range shot. Devin Vassell hits a 3. 5-point game. Then all of a sudden, 20 seconds left to go in the game. Devin Booker is running down the clock. San Antonio fouls him late in the shot clock. You're like, what are you doing? Why are you waiting so long to foul? And then out of the inbounds, DeJounte Murray just takes the ball away from Chris Paul off the inbounds. He goes down the end of the court, gets a layup. And all of a sudden, it's a 3-point game. And you're like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden the Spurs could be just getting this win. And then you get then all of a sudden, Devin Booker out of the next inbound, jump ball off of that. And you're like, okay, if the Spurs get this and get a 3, all of a sudden it's a tie game. Suns get the ball. They get a shot. Devin Booker hits 2 free throws. He misses the second one, gives the Spurs another chance. But then the Suns end up getting the win. They finish it off. So in our report card, how would you grade this win for the Suns? They had it in their hands. They almost gave it up, but they were able to hold on to it in the end.
Look, I think it's a B. I would give them a B for this win because it's their 13th straight win. They found a way to pull it out. Look, they wound up getting outscored by 11 points in the fourth quarter, as you mentioned, a great comeback for the Spurs that fell just short. But at this point, you're got a target on your head. I mean, you're this good, and I think you're being one of the more underreported stories around the league. And at the same time, I think you've wound up being a very, very successful start to the season. I think exceeding expectations for a lot of people, myself included. And so, given all that, knowing that everybody's looking to take you out, and I know it's not a particularly great Spurs team. They showed some pluck later on in the fourth quarter, but overall, I think it's still a really solid win for the Phoenix Suns. So I give them a B, a strong passing grade.
Yeah, we consider combos in in report card, right? I consider that your accomplishment before counts for the accomplishment you're doing now. So 13th win in the row absolutely gets them a little bit extra there. I'm not giving them the A. I'm keeping with the B, like you said. They almost gave this game away. They tried their hardest to give this game away to the Spurs. The Spurs just couldn't take it from them. But the Phoenix Suns, 13 straight wins, absolutely incredible. They're getting it done. They have, a bunch of different ways they can win. It's another team that just feels like, hey, we've been there before. We can win games when we want to. We can turn on the switch. The Mavericks just played them 2 games in a row, and both of those games, the Spurs were like, okay, we're just going to hang around, and then boom, we're going to flip a switch. We'll hit a couple mid-range shots, and all of a sudden, it'll be a 9-point game or something. You won't be able to crawl back from it because our defense is so good.
Right. Look at it. It was at San Antonio too. So the home team's always going to make a deep run. They're always going to get some favorable calls going their way, and that was certainly the case tonight as well.
Oh, you believe that as a Miami Heat fan? Oh, you believe in the favorable calls at home?
On occasion. Sometimes it works out. 2006 was an aberration.
All right, next game. The Indiana Pacers get a big win over the Chicago Bulls. We'll call this one a big win, right? 109-77 in what Matt Peck called an ultimate schedule loss for the Bulls. Lockdown Bulls host. But this is the Chicago's 7th game in 10 days, which is insane. They just finished a 5-game West road trip. Then they played the Knicks in that hard-fought game the night before. How would you grade this loss for the Bulls?
It's not I don't think it's a big deal. I think a lot of people, like as Matt pointed out, are kind of scheduling this loss in their schedule here. I think they assumed that it was going to happen. Like, you come back from a road trip, there's a lot that goes into it. I've always talked about this on Lockdown Heat. You come back from a road trip, you've got to deal with, all the different things that are part of you coming back home. You're dealing with family members, you're dropping the kids off at school, etc. It's a lot to incorporate there. And again, missing key players, missing Alex Caruso, missing Nikola Vucevic again. So I think I don't know how to grade this because you lost, and at the same time, it wasn't a particularly egregious loss. Can we give them an incomplete? Would that work out?
Yeah, we're giving them. We're not giving them a grade. We're sending them to the nurse's office because they need a nap, right? Like, do you ever get sent to the nurse's office because you're like, this guy needs to just lay down for a little bit?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, call your mom. I don't know who your mom would be. Is it Chicago? Is it Alex Caruso? I don't know. Call somebody. Get some help.
Who's the Bulls
get some
mom?
help? Yeah, who's the Bulls mom?
Is it Candace Parker?
Okay, yeah, that's possible.
What about for the Pacers? I mean, this is a good win for them, even though the Bulls scored 16 points in the first quarter, 15 points in the third quarter, and 16 points in the fourth quarter. For the Indiana Pacers, though, they just went through a little bit of a rough stretch where Rick Carlisle was calling them out and everything, but they get a big win for them. 21 points, 11 boards, 4 assists for Domantas Sabonis. I'll give them a B+, right? Like, you take the win, you get it, team win on the road. Even though the opponent was tired, you still play the teams that are in front of you.
I see. I give them an A for this one because they met the challenge. To me, this is a win that really, it kind of could be a stepping stone for this team. They're looking for their identity early on. They're trying to adjust to a new coach. They've got players in and out of the lineup due to injury and various other reasons. So it's been a tough start to the season, but I still see the Pacers as a dangerous team. They've got the talent. They've got the depth. They just haven't been able to tie it together because of all those different players that have been missing time. So this could be the start of something. And yes, obviously, as we mentioned, the Bulls incomplete, and yet you look at that challenge and you met the challenge. You did what you were supposed to on the road. I think it's a good win for them, so I give them the A.
2 more games left. The Timberwolves get the win 110-96 against the New Orleans Pelicans. Let's hear from our guy Jake Madison about this Pelicans loss.
Pelicans get smoked at home by the Minnesota Timberwolves 110-96. I'm Jake Madison of Locked On Pelicans and Locked On NBA. I don't have much for you as the Pels fall to 3-16 on the year. Yeah, injuries have played a part. Brandon Ingram has missed games. He's clearly still banged up right now. No Zion Williamson whatsoever. And you combine that with the fact that they're starting guys like Garrett Temple and Tomas Satoransky, and yeah, you're going to lose. But that doesn't excuse the complete lack of effort, and that's what you saw in this game. Matador defense, staying around doing nothing offensively. It's unacceptable, and these guys need to play harder. And if this is the way the team looks right now, I have to ask the question, how much actually gets solved when Zion Williamson comes back? I'll be covering that and more, so make your first listen this week, Locked On Pelicans.
No, make your first listen Locked On NBA. What do you think about that question though? When Zion comes back, is it going to fix some of this stuff? And then we'll give the Pelicans and the Wolves a grade on this.
No, I don't think it fixes it. I think you still have too many other questions about this team and about Zion. Like, I mean, him coming back is one thing. What version of Zion are we going to see? Like, we assume that he's going to be explosive because that's just the player he's always been. But given his weight, given the nagging nature of his injury, I mean, could he be hobbled somewhat? Is he going to be as effective as he's always been? I don't necessarily see it. And even if he does provide that spark, is everybody going to rally around him as that player? Is that what's been the cause for all these problems early on? Is that you were kind of expecting Zion to be a part of this team earlier to start the season, and then when he wasn't available because of the undisclosed injury and all the different mysterious things that have been taking place in New Orleans, now when he comes back, it's like, oh, okay, he's our leader, he's going to fix everything, and we're going to rally around him. I don't see it. I think this is a lost season for the Pelicans, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're not just sending them to the nurse's office. We're sending them to the principal. We're sending them home. We may send them
to military school.
Yeah, we'll send them to boarding school, right? Like we'll send them somewhere else. But the Timberwolves, I thought this was a solid win for them. 28 points, 10 boards for Karl-Anthony Towns. Just continues to be good this season. Jared Vanderbilt got the assignment to guard Brandon Ingram, and Brandon Ingram went 2 of 13 from the field. So you give him a decent grade for this one.
Absolutely.
Timberwolves get that win. Also, Ben Beacon of Locked On Wolves said Minnesota has held 6 of their last 7 opponents to under 100 points, which is pretty good for a team that we didn't expect to be very good defensively. They're putting something together over there in Minnesota. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I don't think it's a play-in team, but it's at least something in the positive direction where they haven't been.
I give the Pelicans a B for I give the Wolves a B for their win. The Pelicans are just another F minus. I don't know if you can go any lower than that.
Speaking of F minus, let's talk about the Sacramento Kings losing to the Philadelphia 76ers, 94-102. Sixers get the win. Matisse Thybulle is returning for them. Tyrese Maxey continues to play well, 24 points for him. Andre, don't call me Drummond. Don't call me Big Penguin Drummond. 9 points, 23 boards, 7 of them on the offensive end. 3 blocks, 3 assists for Andre Drummond. Let's do this one. What would you give the Sacramento Kings for this loss?
Another F. It's so disappointing. You can't even rely on the new coach bump anymore against a terrible Philadelphia team that's missing their key players. Like, they're missing their 3 all-stars, or at least all-star kind of peripheral players there in Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, and Ben Simmons. And somehow you still can't find a way to win them. It's clear that Luke Walton isn't the problem then, right?
Oh, this thing I get so mad about when people are like, oh, he's gone. Finally, it's going to fix everything. And then other people will say, well, you guys wanted Luke Walton gone so bad, and now he's gone and didn't fix everything. Guys, problems are always plural, right? Problems will always be, there will be always more than one thing. But man, this Sixers team was missing, let's see if I can do some math real quick, $99 million of salary in this game. Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and Tobias Harris all out in this game. I think maybe were they missing Seth Curry too? But yeah, they were.
Yeah,
so let's throw another. What's another $8 million on that? Right, like $106 million, $107 million of salary missing from this game. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, not a great look for the Kings. Unfortunate start for Alvin Gentry there. And again, another team that's just missing that identity. They're missing that, not necessarily a star player. They've got a veteran, Harrison Barnes, but obviously he's been more of a role player, as well as been playing this year, unexpectedly well as he's been this year. He's just not that guy who's going to be, he's going to put everybody on his back and say, I'll carry you to a victory. there's something missing there. And I know that dysfunction of the Kings, if you listen to Matt George at any point, you'll be fully aware of what's been happening in Sacramento. But at the same time, it's just, you look at this roster, you look at this front office, you look at everything about this team. They need such a restart, and they're not getting it. Alvin Gentry, not the kind of guy who's going to be able to provide any kind of significant spark for this team.
If this team is the exact same after the trade deadline, I mean, what are we doing at this point, right? They got to sell off some of these pieces, like Bagley, Buddy, probably De'Aaron. Like, these guys have just got to go. They got to restart with something else again, it seems like.
Yeah.
There you go. That's Locked On NBA on a Tuesday. We're breaking down all the games. Listen to Locked On NBA tomorrow with Jake and John. Also, make your second listen today. Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Josh Lloyd's always doing the best stuff, just absolutely dominating that field. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On NBA. Boom.